Hello and welcome to our Ask the Expert live stream sessions. Today we are joined by media expert and director of Decentered Media, Dr. Rob Watson, who's going to be telling us all about his career and what he's done and how he's got to the path that he's on now. As always, if you have any questions, feel free to pop them into the comments and we'll answer them as we go along. If you're watching this as a video rather than a live session, feel free to still pop your questions in and we will try and answer them as soon as possible. And throughout the session, we'll be popping in links that will help you or that relate to what we're talking about. So without further ado, let's bring Rob onto the live stream. Hi, Rob, you all right?
Hello, I'm good, thank you. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. Thank you for joining us.
No, thanks for having me.
That's all right. So do you want to give a quick overview about who you are, what you do, and all that?
Okay, so I run a consultancy company, which is giving people advice and guidance and training people about community media. So the idea is that when we think of our media, we tend to think of it in terms of the big corporate players, Sky, Netflix, the BBC, that kind of thing. Well, this is little independent media groups and media organisations, so like community radio stations. So in Leicester, there's Cohenor Radio, there's Radio Sierra, there's Leicester Community Radio, Takeover Radio. There's a few radio stations that you can get directly involved with, and they kind of need a different way of thinking about what you do. And what we kind of say is that community media is 10% media and 90% community development. So the kind of skills that people think about and the mindset that people have is slightly different. So it might be easier to illustrate this if I share the screen, hopefully successfully for a second.
Yeah, absolutely. Go for it.
Where it goes to. And there we go. So has that come up on? Oh, have I gone the wrong screen? Is that right? Is that the right? Is that
your website?
Yeah. Is that the right one?
Yeah,
okay, great. So Decentered Media. So I do things like podcasts, video blogs, photography gallery, that kind of stuff, which is all kind of just based on a simple WordPress site. So what I do with other organizations is I help them to set up their site so that they can use all widely available tools, as much as you can get for free as possible, rather than having to pay for expensive packages. And this is a project which I've been supporting recently, which we've called Leicester Stories, which is about training community reporters. So it's about people who go out into the streets of Leicester. I've not been doing it for long, but you go out into the streets of Leicester and you talk to people and you ask them, in this case, it was about why they completed the census. And then the little clips that they produce, they get shared with the community radio stations and played out as a message for people in Leicester. So what you've got is local voices, people talking about local experiences, people representing people from Leicester talking about their own experience themselves. And I've followed the model pretty much in my own website, which is having a YouTube channel on it, and it doesn't show up Instagram page and Twitter account and things like that. So it's really about bringing the kind of content. This is all fueled by the content. What are the stories that you're going to tell? So that's where my work fits in shaping that.
Oh, nice. So if we ever get stopped in the middle of the city centre and asked about the census, so we know why.
Well, yeah, I mean, hopefully we've done all completed the census now, so we won't have to. But it might be about something else. You know, what are the other relevant issues that people want to talk about? And we're going to move on. We've got some work doing with the Y Theatre, their heritage project.
Oh, yeah.
So we're going to do some heritage-based podcasts and clips and things and get them played out on the station. There's lots of issues about regeneration, about the feeling, how do you belong in Leicester? What's your identity that's tied with Leicester? So those kind of issues. We just want to get people telling their stories.
Nice, brilliant. So we've got a couple of questions for you that we'll run through. So the first one we've got is about your past. So you've had a variety of jobs in the media industry throughout your career. Please, could you give us a timeline of your work experience?
I've never had a formal job in a formal media organization. So I've always done things like DJing, and I did a photography course when I think I was 18. I worked in electronic shops selling cameras and things like that. So I've never worked in a formal media organization. And then I went to university and did a media course, and kind of found that I quite like teaching, and I learned I ran some media courses, doing radio production and social media and things like that. And this was all at the time when DSLRs were kind of coming onto the market, so they were new. So before then, you had this, you'd have to have spent £100,000 on a video camera and a studio, and it cost lots of money. That at this point, the kind of early noughties, the mid noughties, desktop computers became powerful enough for you to edit video, and Photoshop became popular. So it was kind of at that edge, that kind of point where all of this technology suddenly became available, and we were kind of teaching courses where people learnt about that and used that, because at the time there were no rules about that. Now there's lots of people set up that tell you how to do this, but at the time there was people. The BBC, for example, at the time didn't have digital studios. They were still using tape, and their staff had to be skilled up on digital technology. Now everything's digital. So at that time, we were ahead with using digital technology and editing applications and things like that. So it was thinking about the kind of content that you could produce and the work that you do. So I kind of followed an academic path for about 20 years. And then about 2 years ago, I kind of decided I'd had enough, and I wanted to go freelance. They made me a good offer, and I've set up as an independent consultant now, running my own business, doing the advisory work that I do, and I'm kind of free to choose on work on the projects that I want to do. And what drives that is a kind of, I suppose, what I'm most interested in is helping people to help themselves to make their own media, rather than waiting for somebody to give you permission, or waiting for somebody, because we've got the tools now, we've got the technology in our hands.
It's all in the palm of our hands.
It's in the part, we're sitting in front of laptops, and we don't need to wait for somebody to tell us that we should make our media in a particular way. We can make it in a way that we want to make, which is relevant to us. So I draw a lot on the research work that I did, and the kind of the academic stuff that I do. I draw a lot on that now to inform the kind of way that I support different organizations now.
Brilliant. That actually leads us on to our next question very nicely. So what qualifications do you have that have enabled you to do what you've done?
Well, I mean, it depends what you mean by qualifications. I've got a PhD, so I spent a long time doing a PhD. And what that gave me was an ability to analyze a situation and look at it and report on that and make credible knowledge, if you like, about that. That's what a PhD does. So it's a long process. It's a very testing process. In terms of qualifications, I've got a BTEC. My first, as I said, my photography course that I did gave me a BTEC. And that was many years ago. And I'm really interested in that kind of crossover between not just reading books, but practice as well. Yeah. So I read a lot about media, but I make podcasts and videos as well. I don't make them very well. And I'm not saying I make them very well. I don't even try to make them professionally, to use that phrase. But I want to try. I hope they're interesting. And I get a lot from doing them as well. And that's what I bring to the people that I'm talking to and working with, because I think you've got to start somewhere. I think one of the problems with particularly media is that people think that you've got to be Steven Spielberg and it's got to be perfect before you start, and it doesn't. It can be rubbish, but you've got to start somewhere. And actually, I find the bits that people label as rubbish are the interesting bits. And the people that are slick and professional, particularly when it comes to radio, the slick and professional, the DJ stuff and the sound design, and that's the boring part of it. I like the bits in between, the gap, because that's where the authenticity is. That's where people are being themselves.
I guess that sort of analogy shows in everything, really, doesn't it? You may not think it, but even in like maths, you want to sort of, as well as getting the answer, you need to show the working out. And like with art generally, half the interesting part is watching someone get to the end point.
This sounds to have got a job in the media industries in the late 80s, early 90s. I'd have had to have found somebody who worked in the BBC or something like that and stalked them. Now you just follow them on Twitter and Instagram. Now they've got a website you can see, and they're happy to share how this works. So it's all transparent now. If you're interested, if you make that step into following somebody, don't just take, you see Instagram influencers. What you should be interested in is not what they're trying to sell you, but how they're trying to sell you it. How they've created the photo, the illusion of somebody being slim and, amazingly attractive. And we all know it's fake because they've used, manipulation, Photoshop to change how they look. They've stood in a particular angle. They've used a particular lens. If you're interested in that, that's how you know you're interested in media production. How you create and craft that message, that image. If you're finding yourself, it's like driving a car, isn't it? You could just have a car and you just drive around, which is great, but you pay somebody else to service it. Some people like to lift the bonnet. Some people like to service it themselves. Some people like to find out how it all works. For media production, you need to know how it works, because then you can change it and you can do something else with it.
Brilliant. So you mentioned you've had quite a wealth of experience in a lot of different areas under media production. What has been your favorite job role in your time in the industry, and why?
I have to say the work I do now. I wake up in the morning being self-employed, and I kind of, okay, you have a thing which hangs over your head is, am I going to get the next contract so I'm going to pay the bills? But then you wake up, then you realize you have your cup of coffee and you go, no, I'm doing the work that I want to do. And I can turn it down if I don't want to. So, it's that gig economy thing. Sometimes it's fraught with anxiety, but I like being my own boss. But that's built on the skills that I've got in terms of organization, confidence to contact people, the ability to manage things. It's taken me 20, 30 years to get those skills to the point where I'm now very confident to be able to do that and not rely on other people as part of that. So I've kind of standing on my, it's like you take the stabilizers off your bike, and it's like, you've got to show that you can ride the bike yourself. And there's a freedom that comes with that. So that kind of freelancing is really good. And what you find with that, you also have because you're not bound in an institution, you're able to freely work with people that you like and people that you get on with and that you connect with. When you work in a large organization, you kind of have to fit in with the people that are already there. And that can be great if it's a supportive environment, but it can also be quite testing if it's not. Whereas when you've got the freedom to work as a freelancer, the opposite is true. You don't have the support there, but you've got the freedom there. So it's just where you are. And at different times in your life, that might be relevant and it might not be. So.
Nice. So in your opinion, from your experience, what skills do you need most to succeed in your industry?
Okay, the most important skill is this: a notebook that you complete all the time. You never walk into a client expecting them to take the notes. The skill, when your tutors are asking you, have you got your notebooks out? And my experience, 20 years teaching at DMU, was people just did not bring notebooks. They thought they'd retain it all in their head, and they didn't. And the difference between a good student and a good employee and a good entrepreneur is somebody who writes the notes, because the person who writes the notes has the power about what's happened and what's just been said. So even though you're kind of paying attention, you can go back over your notes and say, no, this is what we asked for. A friend of mine's a photographer, and he takes loads of notes when he talks with a client when they're just setting out. And there's times clients change their mind about what they want, and they don't realize they're doing it because they're caught up in 6 other different projects. And then they come back to you and they can ask for one thing, which costs thousands and thousands of pounds extra and days of extra work. You bring them back to your notes and say, no, this is what you actually asked for. So it's the basis on which you do everything. You have a good set of notes, and then everything else from that follows.
That's actually a really good tip, because I suppose it's drilled into us quite young as well, but we don't actually realize it.
You don't value it because it's not put in a situation. Sometimes it just seems you're asking us to take notes for the sake of it. Can't you just give us the PDF with the notes on it already? It's like, no, you're going to be sitting in a room with somebody who's going to pay your wages for the next 3 months. or give you promotion in 3 months if you do a good job. You're there to do the work. You take the notes. And the good students and the attentive people, they're the ones that do that. And they're the ones who succeed and do well.
100%.
I'll get off my soapbox.
Right. No, don't worry. So the next question we've got is, as someone who is well experienced in the industry, which is valued more, work experience or qualifications?
It works both ways. People who tell you that their experience is the most amazing thing about them, don't believe them. And people who tell you that their qualifications are the most amazing thing about them, don't believe them. Put them to the test, because some people who've got really great qualifications have only learnt those qualifications from a book or in a classroom. People who've actually gone out and done the practice, but what the qualifications indicate is that you've also got the extra mindset of being able to think through problems, so problem solving. But look, it depends on what your skills are. It's like, what do we mean by intelligence? What do we mean by, so intelligence comes in loads of different ways. I can't put up a shelf. I'm not very good at cooking. I'm not very good with physical things. I can write evaluation documents and I can edit audio and video and stuff like that. But does that mean it depends on what the role is that you want to do. I think the problem comes when it gets pigeonholed and that people use their qualifications almost as a kind of guarantee for entry. So when you're working for some organizations, and maybe one of the next questions might kind of relate this in a different way, it's not every organization is looking for somebody with expert qualifications. Likewise, not every organization is looking for somebody with experience, because when you've learned something and you've learned to do it wrong or badly, you need somebody to come in to do it a different way. And with the changes that we've got with our media, there's always a new way to learn about it. The community reporters have taught me about Canva, the platform for sharing social media posts. I haven't used that before. They taught me. So I take the view that you're learning from each other, and a good organization for the future is that kind of relationship where you're both learning from each other. There's things that are well established that you need to learn from, but there's new things that you can introduce because you're curious about them. And being curious is the most important part. That's the bit. That's experience or qualifications. No, curiosity. Because that leads to experience and qualifications.
Yeah, it leads to knowledge and trying things, I suppose, which is the important thing. The next question we've got, like you said, it did lead on slightly. What advice can you give someone wanting to work in the media industry?
This is going to sound terrible. There's loads of other jobs in the media industry. I think the media industry is often really boring. It's formulaic. Go and work for a charity and do their social media. Go and work for an NGO, non-governmental organization. Go and work for an organization with a social purpose. Somebody who wants to campaign against, kind of the climate change or racism. Join a group and develop your skills in that way. Yes, you can have a really great job in an industry, but is that what you're passionate about? So sometimes we make our choices on the basis of thinking that, I want to be a video editor, therefore I've got to go and work for the people who supply Sky Sports with their video editing material. And you end up doing that job day in, day out for years, and it's boring. Whereas if you're following something which you're passionate about and you care about or you care for, then you've maybe got a bit more chance to say, okay, I'll be a bit poorer, but I'm following something which is a bit more, I think there's a space for, it's not for everybody, but there's a space there that you can kind of, and lots more organizations are making their own media now. So, Leicester College is running a video YouTube channel. It's like, who'd have thought they'd be doing that 10 years ago?
Honestly, not us. But I suppose it does sort of lean into it. Sometimes if you don't pick the obvious option, you end up still getting to that end result, but learning so much more along the way, and sometimes taking paths that take you down places you never really sort of expected or would have even tried before, and ending up loving it.
Be open. When you're young, be a generalist. There's time to specialize later on. Learn as much as you can. Learn what you don't like, learn what you do like, and try as many different things as you can. Some you'll be good at, some you'll be terrible at, but just be open and be curious about them.
Bro. So the next question is more about your specific role currently. So what kind of hours do you work at the moment?
Well, at the moment, far too many. So this is the problem with freelancing. I'm doing about 50 or 60 hours a week for the last 3 months because that's the jobs that I've got on at the moment. They need that kind of attention. So I'm sitting here at 8 o'clock in the
Hmm.
morning and 8 o'clock in the evening. I'm kind of packing up.
Still going.
Still going, and that happens in short bursts. So you've got to be able to manage your time. You've got to be able to make sure that you get out and have regular breaks. I'm probably looking a bit pallid and need some sunshine, all that kind of stuff. But then I'll have, what I'm looking forward to is having maybe June and July, where I'm not working as much, so I can take a lot more time off. So you've got to be flexible. It depends on what your clients need, and that's one of the differences. I can't clock off at 5 o'clock. If you want a
Yeah.
job doing that, Tesco's, Asda, they're great for that kind of thing. But if you want to be kind of self-driven, enterprising kind of person, you're going to have to put the hours in. That's just the way it works.
No, that's very fair. And the next question we've got is again about your current role. What is something people don't know about your job that may surprise them?
Oh, that's a really good question.
Apart from the hours, because I feel like the hours is quite a shocking thing as well. But
Well,
you sort
the
of,
hours is
when you
very
think about
standard. Any self-employed kind of media person is doing those kind of hours. What
yeah.
may surprise them? I think it's, I don't know, because it's like sometimes I have my head so close to the grindstone that you don't
Everything's
step
normal to
back.
you.
Yeah, and I was
Yeah.
talking to a friend earlier, and he said, "Oh, your podcasts are really interesting." It's like, I don't see that, but sometimes you need to step back from yourself to see what other people see, so that you can value what you do.
Hmm.
For me, it's probably the freedom to make choices that you've got, and that's like you don't know where you're going to put your next foot, and that's both interesting, but it's also quite scary. And I think what I don't like to do is have a plan. One of the things about business advice is to have a business plan. The next 2 or 3 years is all mapped out. At the moment, and certainly with low COVID and the lockdown, it's day to
Hmm.
day. Take it one day at a time. And I think that's the best way to deal with it at this point. If I get overloaded and overwhelmed, then I need to shift and do it in a different way. But at the moment, it's like, just that kind of day-to-dayness. There is no plan. There's the surprise. There is no plan.
I mean, for a business, that can come across as quite surprising. So if that's the way that operates and
Well, maybe
works for
I'm not
you.
sure I'm doing it right, but there you go. I haven't got a Maserati sat outside the house. So.
Our final question is quite a nice one to end on. What is the most rewarding aspect of your job?
There's a word that's cropped up a couple of times this week, which is something I've been thinking about, which is permission. And what you do when you
Okay.
train people to use media for themselves is kind of like you're giving them permission. It's the wrong word, and I don't know what the right word is. But the most rewarding aspect is when you've helped somebody and and then they go off and they're making all sorts of media by themselves. With the Leicester Stories project, I didn't do any training or tutoring. I did a little bit, but they went off and did stuff by themselves. And I was amazed at that because it was great. They were keen, they cared about it, they were passionate about it, and they went off. And I just gave them some advice of how to improve it. And that's the rewarding part of it. When you find people who, it's like if you touch the live wire or you light the blue touch paper and people
Hmm.
are off doing their own thing. If you find something that you care for and you're passionate about, you will spontaneously do stuff because you care about it.
Yeah.
And that's the nice part of the job, is that when you find those little moments where people go, I was really shy and I didn't think I'd be able to go and do this. But all of a sudden I found myself doing it because it was great. And I became more confident in the process. That's the nice part.
I suppose that ties in nicely as well to the whole community aspect of what you do. It's enabling others and self-powering each other, which is it's just a very nice thing, especially in today's society. So that is all the questions we've got for you, Rob. So thank you so much for joining us. We hope you've enjoyed listening to Rob's story. If you want to find out more about Decentered Media, we'll pop the link in the comment section below. We've also popped in some of the courses we offer that relate to the media industry. And if you're not too sure what you want to do, or if you're unsure about how to get into that industry, we pop the link for our careers team, who will be able to help you and give you some ideas to see if it's the right choice for you and what would be the best steps to enable you to get there. Again, if you have any comments or questions, pop them in and we will get back to you and answer them as soon as possible. But that is all from us today. So again, thanks, Rob, and we hope you have a good evening.
Thank you very much.
Bye.